Howdy. 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 Here we go. All right. Well, welcome back to our last day of Interop 2024. Thank you all for coming. We are past the check-in already. We're doing the opening remarks, which are going to be pretty simple, and then we'll dive into the after-action review. First of all, I want to kind of get a general feel for what you guys think about this week. So, how many feel more like this guy? Or how many feel more like this guy? What do you think? How was the week?
And the both? You have an AI fusion of both?
Well,
That'd be good.
so let me get some, who's got the microphones? Okay, so let's get some general comments first. Overall, what comes to mind? Anybody want to speak up? Yeah, just raise your hand.
I'll kick it off. I've been to a lot of these. It's been a few years though, so it's the last one. But I'll say that I think it was a really first class feeling event from front to back. Of course, there's some things that we'll talk about that need to be improved because the production values of the kids I keep using went up a major notch. I thought it was a really good showcase of the city, the university. So I thought it was just really fun with everybody. So, and everybody, for the most part, seemed to be a lot more relieved on the staff side. I know you guys were all still sweating, but, you just see a different look in people's face. So kudos to you all for really making it more destination event.
Great, thank you. And over here?
I just stumbled onto this event and I have been just blown away by how much goes on here and what y'all do and how it's done. Disaster City, Relish, DCDC, it's just an exceptional thing y'all do. Exceptional.
Thank you. Anybody else? General comments? Yes, sir.
I'm so relieved because of the weather. I'm not used to this humidity. Oh my God, I can't really understand how you can live in this temperature and humidity. Yeah, but I'm also incredibly impressed about the facilities and the exercises and all the things you've done here. I mean, back home in Sweden, we have nothing compared to this, and it's been a real privilege to attend this week and see how you guys doing, and hopefully we can come back and bring some of the guys from Sweden over to see what you got and learn from what you're doing. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, maybe we can do a TAMU campus in Sweden.
Yeah.
Back for cold weather. Yeah. Cold weather, not one. Any other comments? Please raise your hand. Okay, all right, so I know most of you are here from the exercise, but we do have some people here that went through the workshop, so I want to see if we can capture some comments on that. So on Monday, we had opening remarks, we had the keynote from Dan Cotter at DHS, we had a panel on MCPTT SideLink, we had the tour of the Bush Library, and we had dinner with a contact presentation. So just open it up to the floor. Please raise your hand so we can get you on the microphone for those that are on the stream. Any memorable moments from Monday that come to mind? Anything that stood out from Monday? Nothing stood out. Okay.
I was here on Monday.
No, I think the panels were really good. I mean, I think you had the right people. There's a really good mix of responders, industry, academia. I think it was well done, really well done.
Okay.
So.
And the keynote by Dan Cotter, it is so hard to get him nailed down, and for him to come down here just that one day was a challenge in itself. And we got a lot of good feedback from him participating and the comments that he made, because he is a staunch supporter of the respondent community. He's been working in that space for probably 25 plus years.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything in particular that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
From Monday, Standards are like toothbrushes, everybody has them, nobody wants to use anybody else's.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I also like the icon, H, one that, you came up with, but, oh gee, it was the hospital. Oh, no, it's all about their landing thing.
Right, right. Okay, so we heard some things that went well. Anything we need to improve on for the next time?
How about logistics getting to Annenberg? No issues.
Logistics, getting to the location. Are you okay?
Yeah, that was good,
Okay,
good.
okay. And any other suggestions?
Not time it with the graduation.
Not time to address.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move on to Tuesday. So we had opening remarks. We had a whole bunch of panels in communications for Next Gen 911, Team Awareness Kit, Infrastructure Framework, Identity Credentialing and Access Management, AI3, Innovation and Public Safety, and the role of standards in interoperability. Then we had the tour of the Bush Combat Development Complex, and the gala with the keynote from Joe Wassel from FirstNet Authority. Any key memorable moments that come to mind for that day?
The dancers
The dancers, all right.
and the
Aggie
cadets
Wranglers. yes.
and the cadets.
And the cadets,
Yeah.
the Ross volunteers, fantastic. Okay,
I love being made aware of TAC.
okay, great. Is that something that has, so where are you from?
Houston,
Houston, okay, and your agency doesn't use TAC?
I don't have an agency, so I didn't, I just had no, I'm not a first responder.
Okay,
So this is all very new to me.
Okay.
Like I said, it's an exception for.
very good, all right. Anything that anybody wants to mention about what went well or what needs to be improved on Tuesday, any of the panels, microphone over here?
It was a nice, tour of the Combat Development Center, but because we were crunched for time, we couldn't go out onto the range.
Right,
And that would have been great, to spend about an hour out there just to see what you were able to do.
yeah. Okay. In the back, yeah.
Good morning. Just, I think from a vendor. Okay, just from a vendor perspective, I think the move indoors was much appreciated. And I don't think that there's any universe where a tent can compete versus air conditioning.
Yeah.
So that probably should have been, I think, a get-go.
Okay, all right,
Well, I think I was gonna say that, you know, for some people, you end up torn between, well, do I need to have this conversation in the hallway with a person I haven't seen in a year who's been trying to get my attention, or I've been trying to get theirs? Or do I go on this cool sounding tour? And I almost kind of wish you didn't have to choose and you just said, hey, everybody's going on the tour, you know, and you can have the hallway conversations as you walk and ooh and ah. I just don't know if logistically that's possible for the given facilities, but just something to consider is just try and like make everybody go on the tour, because I probably would have liked it, but also, you know, you're having to make a choice.
okay.
So maybe adding a network opportunity perhaps?
Okay, very good. Any other suggestions on Tuesday? Okay. Wednesday morning was the last part of the workshop, so we had our opening remarks panel on the future of interoperability, keynote from Charlie Denemy up in Washington DC, the SWIC up there, and panel 9 was the resilient communications or PACE plan. Any memorable moments from Wednesday morning? Anybody wants to comment on? Sir.
Yeah, I think Charlie gave a great speech, very hard, felt, got me motivated,
Me too.
very motivated.
Me too. Okay, anything anybody wants to point out about something that went particularly well or something that needs to be improved for next time from Wednesday morning? Okay, and any final suggestions before we move on? All right, so then, general comments on the workshop for the format. did you like the format with all the panels? Was there enough time for, maybe more time for networking? Generally the comments, the facilities, pluses, minuses, any general comments on that? No, okay, already covered, okay. All right, then we had, the vendor expo times, so those of you that are from the vendor community that are here, so we had some times on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday at CIR, and Thursday at Disaster City, so either from the vendors or those that visited the vendor tents and maybe learned something that they didn't know before. Anything in particular that stood out that you learned dealing with the vendors?
I think we've always kind of known that this is sort of two separate events in some ways, you know, where you don't necessarily have the same user groups for both days. And this is something I was talking with John Contestable last night is, you know, really, you almost have three different, user groups you have to market to, because you have the, you know, federal, international, and state partners that are like thought leaders are invested in the future stuff that typically attend the panels. You have the first responders that get dragged into this stuff. They're like, what am I doing? Right, on Thursday. But you also have a potential third group, which could be people that aren't part of the exercise, but are just coming because they heard it's gonna be an exhibition day at Disaster City and they can just walk around and look. And maybe that would be a good market to try and hit, so that the venue can probably have a little bit more traffic, you know, the general observers kind of wandering around, just kind of envisioning like, you know, make a little map, like at Disneyland, here's where the Splash Mountain is, and here's where this, you know, you have little stages and people kind of know where to go throughout the day to see what might be going on. That would bring in more traffic, because the first responders are busy, and the panel attendees have already seen all the vendor booths, they've already been there, so it kind of leaves who's left.
Okay, like that, all right. Any of the vendors, here that want to make any comments about what went well, what could be improved? Okay, previous comment about the outdoor.
Yeah, I just let's see the previous comment, right? I mean, it gets to the point of traffic and where the traffic is for the day. And definitely during Thursday scenarios, the traffic was either at the props or at the OTC, not in 85 to 90-degree humidity in the sun.
Got it, okay, very good. All right. The exercise itself. Okay, so we're gonna break this up into pieces, I think, because there are lots of things going on in parallel. So as far as the technologies that we did, so we're gonna first talk about technologies, and then I want to come back and look at the locations. But for the technologies, mission critical push to talk, right? So connecting the P25 radios with the T-Mobile and Verizon and FirstNet phones. What went well? What didn't go so well? What would you like to comment on? Those of you that use some of the technology.
So, me and him actually use the technology, and, I think the push to talk worked quite well. I didn't have any issue with it. The only time I ran into an issue was when we were using TAC and somebody else with Kia, the push to talk program would take over the screen, so to speak, it would switch to that program that would interrupt wherever I was trying to type and then put them in on TAC. And that became kind of cumbersome if I was in a menu in TAC and going through something, push to talk would pop up when someone began to speak, and then it would reset the menu and I'd have to go through the process again and it just kept taking over.
So sort of like a prioritization issue. right?
Yeah, but as far as the actual program, it worked quite well. Like I didn't have any problem communicating through it. I don't know if you had any issues or not, or.
I also use the MCPGT and it essentially did not work for me all day. I had issues with it. I basically had to resort to using it. Every time I would push to talk, it just said no connection, regardless of whether I was in the building, out in the field, doing whatever. I don't know if that was something that I should have troubleshooted or whatever. I made multiple comments about it.
Okay.
I had no issues with TAC though. using
Were you
TAC.
able to switch over to Texmorn 13, 14, 15 on your radio?
I would occasionally, when it would pick up signal, I can switch, but any other time I would try to switch, and then it would just resort back and say no connection, so that's the thing.
On the phone, but on your radio, were you able to use text?
Oh, on the radio I was, yeah, not on the phone, I was not able to switch.
Interesting, okay.
The tech worked well, I could see the pins people dropped, I could even see messages, pictures, whatever people replaced about the locations, that was pretty simple.
Okay.
There on the right.
I think we had some issues where whenever you hook up to the Wi-Fi, or however that is pronounced, sorry, Wi-Fi issues, yeah, sorry. You had coverage issues, and you also had service issues. So I would like to see more MDM related things to the exercise, see how we can feed that, how we can alter, differ. I put some tinkering with your device and it didn't work eventually. But all in all, it was very impressive to see the integration. And I did my first P25 talk this session. It was very nice. Felt very similar to Tetra, but felt nice. Thank you.
Okay.
I was just going to comment on the devices. It's really obvious how far we have to go on the device side. I mean, having a map application and a PTT application in the same device doesn't work, I think. So that's an eye opener. We have to do a lot more, I think. The business, or I mean, the industry, something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
So as far as the end user goes, we like the attack. Dropping the pins, we had the same issue with push pocket, take precedence over what we were trying to do on stream dropping the pins. We also had an issue with the broadcasting the pin that we were trying to drop. We knew where we were, we knew what the dangers were, but we just couldn't communicate with everyone else. So I don't know how to fix that on the technology side, but overall, I could definitely see us using TAC. If nothing else, throughout our agency and our regular control shifts. I really like that. A lot of the incidents we go to, we don't see using TAC and being able to drop pins in danger areas, unknowns, those kind of things. So I really like the TAC, just getting that broadcasting figured out would help us out a lot.
Okay, currently, when you're using your radio, you also make use of apps on your phone, I guess, for other applications. Yeah, it's interesting, 2 years ago, we had, I guess it was a captain, SWAT team, where we were sending the calls through, from 911 all the way out to the first responders. And they were telling us something similar, which is I can't deal with radio function and the phone function on the same device. I need two different devices to do that. It's just too much, to deal with screens and clicking and stuff like that.
Yes, sir, I agree.
Okay.
Quick question for the officer from the University Police. So if there was a position set up somewhere on the field that was a central location that you can go to when you're having trouble, would you have been able to, during the exercise, get to that place to get that device troubleshot and still not interrupt what you're doing in the exercise, or?
Yes, sir, yeah, that would
Okay.
happen. And I talked to several people here about the issue to try to get it troubleshooted, like you mentioned, and I was unable to do it. But something like a central place would have been accessible, that would have been fine.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so I don't know, you might be able to help me out. Is there a way to create a sub chat function just for that incident? And so others can see but not interrupt? That might help, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few ways to get to the matter, and then, we discovered some things, because we were testing things out here too, and we're like, oh crap, that's not working how we thought it would. We've already put in some tickets for some stuff to get changed, to prevent sort of the leakage problem that we had in the live stuff. But yeah, so I think though, like a general observation is that, once again, it's a very ambitious demonstration of technology. It's kind of hard to weave all these things in. From a training standpoint, I think it's really hard to try to have a room of like 200 people, but then like only 15 are actually taking the training. It probably needs to be broken up, and then we probably, the participants and the organizers need to be deliberate about what our intention is, for the tool. Like I'll tell you, if Brandon's giving a class on how to, use basic TAC functionality like we were doing out here, we would probably allot probably an hour to that to make sure people, get it and do the basic stuff that we want, and so we don't have accidents. If the intent is just to put dots on the map for accountability, which did work, I thought pretty well for the exercise, that was nice. You can do that in 15 minutes, right? But just understanding that and instead of it gives, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So maybe segmenting the groups out, so they don't have that distraction. Instead of we're trying to simultaneously train, but also explain the architecture and the intent. Those are kind of different audiences.
Along those lines, would having maybe, a location where first responders can go and become more familiarized before they come here to, help with the technology or what the intent, because I think that was part of the other issue, is that it was hard to communicate to them what they're going to experience.
Yeah.
What, because they want to come and participate, but also they want to make sure that they have a level of understanding of what is expected of them. Maybe a series of YouTubes that can explain some basic functionalities, that way the learning curve is shortened, maybe not YouTubes, but something like that.
Yeah, I think that's one way to tackle it, and yeah, I don't think we can communicate effectively to them what the expectations are, if we're not really clear amongst each other about what our expectations are, and I'll own definitely a big piece of that, didn't really think about that much, like, what are we trying to do? I knew we were interested in connecting at like an architecture level, to see about bridging for future interoperability stuff, but in terms of what's our goal for the first responders, we didn't really come with one,
Maybe doing some sort of breakout sessions, where you're doing the trainings. Maybe if you look at some kind of breakout sessions for the training, because there were some folks that were more experienced with TAC. There were folks that did not know anything about TAC. Same thing with radios and the push to talk. Maybe offering some breakout sessions for those that need a little bit more specific training on the devices and the applications that are being used, instead of trying to do one group session. Break it up into different groups with different instructors.
I think that goes a long way, but I think the other challenge is some of the first responders were not available all week, and they were only available during the exercise. And to make sure that we're setting them up an opportunity to succeed, can we give them anything that they can look at days or weeks before they come to the exercise?
Yeah, but this is perfectly appropriate for this environment, and this will happen. I don't know if you guys were part of the early Interop gateways. People were stepping on each other, somebody was sitting on a button and tying up the channel. Those things all happen, and that's part of, sort of the education and sort of crawl, walk, run. So I'm really glad they saw it here, because now you sort of understand, and they'll have to get the discipline. People, two other data points. One was, love to see the architecture for, was it John Carney? Jane. Yeah, from Irving, city of Irving. Love to see that architecture so that we sort of understand how he's interconnecting the three different or four different solutions that we looked at. And then maybe would be good after, I know you wanted to keep people on their toes, and so you weren't giving all the scenarios out, but maybe just after each event, maybe flashing, here's what happened, kind of, so we can follow, because we weren't necessarily getting all of it. Because we were running around a little bit, trying to say, oh, let's go look at that, let's go look at this, so it was really, but overall, really well done, so. Thank you.
So since we talked about, we were talking about both MCPDT and TAC so far. For the first responders here, did you have some more, internal organizational objectives you wanted to achieve? And what were those? Were you able to do them?
I would say yes. One, we've been communicating a lot of sizes and scenarios, not just a lot of training too. But getting the see and use the TAC that I've heard so much about, EPS uses it for some of their operations. us not so much. So just getting hands-on experience with that was good, and then put it into scenarios helped out a lot as well.
Okay. Anyone else, any of the other first responders, any particular organization, look, can't talk this morning, organizational objectives you're trying to achieve, and were you able to do that?
Mike, before we move on, if there's any other first responder, we got some feedback from the controllers collected from the field, and I provided an opportunity related to mission critical push to talk and pack. Maybe my battery's gonna go dead here. But there was concern with the battery life, the power consumption of the devices, when you're running both apps, and I think that was an issue that they expressed concern, and also volume. It was difficult, maybe not for the law enforcement, but for the fire departments. They have some difficulty being able to hear clearly, you can only tune up the volume so much. And I know that for the exercise, we didn't think about providing some other accessories that could facilitate that, but that may be something that we need to consider. I think my battery's about to die here. One in that drawer too.
I gotta get that guy's attention.
I can have this. Oh, the other key one I wanted to mention is, the first responders, they could not identify an emergency button. Right, and I think that, or person down buttons, I think, if there was one, they could not find it. If there wasn't one, I think that may be something to consider, in the event, and then also, could not see the identifier for who's making the transmission. So it was difficult sometimes to know exactly who was talking, or what agency was talking. And then if they missed the transmission, it would be nice to have a go back 30 seconds button that you can go back and listen to what was transmitted.
We need to connect you with other stuff.
Which I didn't realize that. I would like to see more emergency target exercises utilizing the button. I know I was in here in the ETAP and I asked what would happen if I pushed any of the red buttons, and they just said, don't do it. That's essentially what I do when I find a red button, I push it, see what happens. But apparently that would make people upset in the entire state. So I decided not to. But a good exercise would be to see how do they do emergency, how does the responders of their emergency that they need help. That would be a nice exercise.
I think what's with the ones, yeah, I think there was a couple of reports of some of the accessories, the cases for the devices were not ruggedized enough. And so I think maybe that was just the cases that were available for the exercise, but probably something that needs to be considered, for future events.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed, and I work with Michael from the ITEC staff, and I was out at the hazmat training derailment prop with the College Station fire. That we were initially thinking that the Wi-Fi extension for the network we set up to go over the power lines and some use of others, and just cutting edge stuff. What was to be putting it out by the train derailment, and they were like, oh, well, we're gonna be fully rigged out with fire gloves, we're not gonna be on a phone out there, we're gonna be doing stuff, we wanted it at the command center. Where we're doing planning before we go in, so that just having it, and obviously Michael had said to talk to the first responders about where they wanted it. But that was kind of just something from the whole thing.
Okay. Has anybody used MCPT before? Okay, have you used, like a Bluetooth speaker mic with it, or you just use it as a phone?
Phone.
Phone?
Phone, but everybody we talk to, just phone, but everybody we talk to in our agency that wants to use it would have an external button that they would want, they won't plug in regular headphones, they would phone.
Right. So that would probably take care of some of the volume issues.
Yeah, one of the other things that was commented by some of the fire department agencies was that they saw it more as an executive level, assistant chief, fire chief, kind of level of advice. you know, they're more comfortable with the traditional radio, the lapel mic kind of a approach. But, you know, it's maybe a little bit difficult, if you drop your phone, is it gonna, is it not gonna break, right? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, you can pound nails with those 225 radios.
Yeah, and the last thing was, are those transmissions being recorded, right? Is there, historical record?
Sure.
Just a comment about the devices. We would gladly share the information that we have done in Europe about rugged devices. I mean, in the Nordic countries, we have a white paper regarding rugged devices and accessories in what we need from a first responder point of view. What the device should do and so on, and it should be ruggedized and yeah, and all that stuff like that. So please come to me or Anton afterwards so we can give you the link to that white paper and you can see what we've come up to.
Fantastic.
Is it English?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on MCBT or TAC? Going once. Okay, let's move on to the next gen 911. Anybody here participate, or do we have any of the call takers or dispatchers here?
We have the actors.
Yeah, we do. Okay, great. So what do you want to say about how that worked?
Marshall.
I did the video call and it took me about 6 to 10 calls for the video to actually go through. And then towards the very end of the day, it just dropped completely. The call just dropped.
Yeah.
So it was pretty frustrating, yeah.
But when you were able to make the connection, Natalie?
Yes, I was able to make the connection.
And what was that experience like?
It was awesome. It was nice to be able to see a face on the other end and for them to see my face. So that way, you know, in case there was a real emergency, they could tell, they could look at my face and see, okay, is she calm? Is she freaking out? And then they could see my location. Like I could, turn the camera back around and show them where I was.
For those of you that don't know, we were attempting the first ever native I3 call into first responders with video. Our call into the PSAP with video and then bridging that call out to the first responders with video. There were problems that we talked about. We would expect there to be problems. And the vendors and the carrier involved are all working on those. And during the day, as you said, during the day, they were making changes, trying to fix things, and they went the wrong way. And I got it back, but yeah, so that was interesting. Thanks for suffering through that, I guess. Okay, was anybody on the receiving end of the next gen 911 call coming from the PSAP? Anybody here on the receiving end out in the field? Yes, over on the.
Oh, there's one right here. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, this one relates to the last statement. So, you know, basically, there are people right now that are doing video and PSAPs and stuff like that, but they're all doing it over the top. And over the top means it's non-prioritized. It's just like any other application. So the reliability that we do with mission critical services is not there. So that's the difference between the approach we're taking and the approach that's being taken in many other places right now. And like Michael said, this is way past leading edge stuff here because this has never been done anywhere before. So, but this is the direction that we're hoping the entire industry will end up going at the end of the day.
Yes, sir.
So I was in the PSAP and we were receiving the video and everything. You know, a few minor issues we're having with any of the phone calls coming in, we were getting tower location data instead of actual coordinates of the people that are calling us and things. But whenever we did have the video come through, I got to watch it a couple of times and I mean, it seemed pretty clear. We were able to
like was said, you could see the expressions on the people's faces and things. And of course, this has been something that's been coming for 20 years. It's been talked about since I started working in 911 in 2000. But it is gonna be something that even with technological stuff that is, once those hurdles are overcome, there's still gonna be a lot of work on the PSAP side because we're gonna have to have a whole new training mindset for our people because they're not just gonna be hearing things, they're gonna be witnessing things that they're maybe not necessarily prepared to do so.
Well, and then just the sheer volume, right? So I've heard policies, procedures, right? So that's part of what we hope to achieve here is by making you aware of some of these new tools. Maybe there's things that you want to consider in how you do your jobs, things that you need to prepare for future procedures, when this technology, does arrive, right? So it's kind of a window for you in the future a little bit. Any other comments on next gen 911? Okay, move on. Anybody here from emergency management that was here in the EOC? Wanted to ask about web EOC, the use of web EOC and how that went in the EOC. Anybody have a comment on that?
We can provide some feedback based on what we saw right as there on during WebEOC. What we were able to do with the state, the state has a server for WebEOC, and so we use the state server, the Lone Star server. And they created an environment for us to have to be able to conduct the exercise and created a county level of a role with the DDC level of role and an incident command post level of a role. And then they engage in that manner. From all perspective, on the users were able to log on, we were to make entries correct. I don't know if anything else went to add.
The biggest challenge that we had, the incident command post was more focused on the initial attack, the initial analysis, the initial resource requests and so forth. And everything was being transmitted by radio. The incident command post did not staff someone to work WebEOC for that day. And so we simulated it. And those simulated items were responded to appropriately. We had people logged in activities that were going on. But the incident command post, because it was the initial operational period, didn't have anyone in that position. So if we're going to test the ability of WebEOC to conduct operations, it might be beneficial to create a scenario where we start the exercise at operational period 3 or 4 or 5, so that the incident command post will be developed sufficiently to have those positions filled. Thank you.
But from the EOC though, there were no issues, right? They were able to log on and enter the STAR request. And I know that the university had a new person, but they were very quickly to get it on the spot training, and they were able to log on and no issues with that.
Did well.
Okay, great. Any other comments on WebEOC before we move on? Okay, so we've got some interesting videos and such to share from AirOps. Are you guys y'all ready, or you need a little time? You just need to. Yeah.
Well, howdy.
Howdy.
I'm Dr. Robin Murphy, and this is one of my grad students, Tom Mancini. We're going to run through some things. Now, how many of you saw the squishy robot drops and saw some of the glamour shots and stuff streaming? Sure, we're getting into that. Well, okay, right. Well, it turns out that was super, right? The streaming's right. There was about another 120 gigabytes of data that we collected and were using and trying to push out. So Tom here is going to show, let's start with if we could start with the ortho.
Yeah, sure. Need 2 seconds.
Okay, so normally in these sorts of things, in these disasters, we would try to push out an ortho as a base map to the responders, so everybody would have that on their phone, and they'd see the actual damage, where they were relative to it, and that sort of thing. And right now, if you fly a drone for the types of areas we're talking about, it's about 30 minutes to fly, 30 minutes with low resolution, 30 minutes to put, or less to put together, and then you push it out. So we'll show what this looks like. This is a slightly higher resolution. Did I mention my name's Murphy? So everything was working. All right, we got that. And you did see that he actually had a screen out there, right?
There was a moment.
There, yeah, it's going away, great. Okay, so we're talking about so we'd sit down in ortho mosaic. I'm gonna show you what that looks like, and you can start seeing why that's valuable. There we go. All right, so that was taken for the stadium, right, area in play. So you can see that would be, for those of you who were quick, you saw that might be of great value as it is, right? To be able to zoom in and out. There it is again. And this is stuff that's flown at a low resolution very quickly. Then you come back and you start flying super high resolution for the damage assessment. But this is for your situation awareness. We just do that. All right, let's see if we can get the, so some of the things you do as more advanced flights that take longer and take a lot. And that, by the way, runs on the laptop. You assemble that all on a laptop, and then it's a matter of pushing 2 gigabyte file out. Now here we're gonna go to the, to some of the cool stuff, the cooler things that you can do, which you saw up there, and that's using LiDAR, or you can use a regular drone and try to do a structure for motion, taking pictures this way and that way. LiDAR is a little more accurate. You can see some of the stuff we're doing there. All right, take it away, Tom.
All right, so this is a LiDAR point cloud of the rubble piles. So I'm gonna show you first it as a RGB point cloud. So we're gonna color in the points based on the photos that were taken. And so I'm gonna try and zoom in on this computer.
Do you want me to hold that for you?
Yeah, sure. So here we have the rubble pile on the west side of Disaster City. And you can see it's starting to load. This is just showing what I've got here. So should be, anybody with an internet connection would be able to pull this up. And we got a pretty decent amount of detail here. Let some more come in, but we're sort of suspecting that this 0.5 is on the sort of sub-centimeter precision. Also, distance between each point is a little bit less than a centimeter. And so, yeah, so if you wanted to take measurements, or if you wanted to sort of zoom around this and plan something or plan a way to enter a scene, then this data could be used for that. I'll zoom out here and show the other rubble pile. Again, we'll give that a moment to load.
Now notice the load time for here in a real place. Think about what that means for you trying it in the ICP, the DSAC to see this, what that's gonna mean.
Yeah.
But this is the high resolution.
This is.
Yeah, this is LiDAR. This is the high resolution. So it's not day one stuff or the first couple hours.
How long did it take to make this?
It took about an hour to fly and then about 6 hours to process.
So you're 7 hours in, but then you go.
Yeah, ideally. You're forgetting how long it takes to actually move the data. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing like this at all. There's a track way there.
You would typically do these types of things around day 3 of something like a hurricane or earthquake. First, you're gonna do that. Or the mosaic, though, you want it almost immediately as part of your rapid recon. You've got eyes on streaming, and then you want that ortho to push out to where your team, to give them, now that you're deploying your teams, what they're looking at and how they can synchronize against that. Okay, so that this is pretty cool.
So there are a couple of other things that come with LiDAR that there are a couple of other things that come with LiDAR that you get just based on the type of sensor. They may not be super valuable, but I'll show them here just because they're kind of fun to look at. The first one is just elevation, like how tall are the things that are around you. So you can do that. The other one that might be interesting is return number. So you can see how much time it took for the light to kind of bounce around before it actually made it back to the sensor. So it's kind of a signal for how complex the scene is. It's like really flat surface gives you, you can think of this as a measure of how complex the surface that the light hit, is. So,
And that might work for your wireless as an indicator as well, that we've got a lot of scatter in that environment.
yeah. So I will pull, so that's for the rebel files. Let me now pull up the one for the training area.
So imagine having this by the end of the first operation cycle.
Can this eventually be integrated to the digital twin to give a more accurate representation?
Brian already talked about this, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, okay, so now we're gonna be looking at, the more northern section of disaster city. So what we saw before was really just those two building collapses. This is now the area that was the hazmat scene and, some of the other, simulators. I'll say this area, and I'll point out some of the artifacts that we see in the LiDAR point cloud is a little bit more noisy than the other scene that we were just looking at. So, yeah, I'll zoom in and show you.
And part of that is that we're learning this as well, and if you've got a lot of metal and a lot of things like that, you're gonna be using video or EO sensors, or you're gonna use LiDAR. So we'll look at that real quick.
So here's the color scene. And then over here is the train car simulators, or the hazmat simulators. And so you can see I'll zoom in here, but there's a little bit of noise, like we've got a slight place where the point clouds disconnect from these two rail cars. And I'll zoom in a little bit more just to highlight, like, this is the sort of errors that you could expect to see in this type of a point cloud.
And so we'll be working on things like that.
What would cause that error? Is it because the cars are black maybe, or?
So I suspect, it's hard to say. It could be a calibration error in the sensor. This was one of the longer flights, and this one we were flying for probably an hour and a half, so it's possible the sensor became uncalibrated as we flew for longer. And the other one is we were further away from the RTK base station, the thing that gives us the really refined GPS points. And so maybe the distance away from that base station contributed to the noise here. But yeah.
Yeah, having these on small drones that can fly at these altitudes, it's rare, expensive, so we're doing that.
Did you have one that you flew it while the college station fire was there?
So this was flown on Tuesday of this week. So
Before the exercise.
Before the day before the.
Well, I can see the fire truck on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get that, but.
Yeah. So this is, like I said, this is probably the worst you could expect to see. These kind of, like, we're calling delaminations, like the places where the point clouds kind of shift away from each other. But it's only in sort of a sub area of the map, at least so far.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of the promising technology. Now, here's the final point. Wouldn't that have been useful, that ortho mosaic pushed out? Did anybody see that? This is the first time you've seen that ortho mosaic. Yeah, pretty sure it is. You never saw the LiDAR, right? Even though we injected it after 2 hours. Okay, we did bring it over to the ICP after 30 minutes of trying to figure out where all this data, we were the data managers for everything. So I said, we've got 120 gigabytes of data, videos, things like that. No place to put it, no place, nobody knew where to go, nobody knew where to do it. So how did we do it? The same way we do it every time, at every disaster. We take a big passport and we sneaker net it over. So keep in mind, we still need to keep that gap of getting the right information to the right person, the right time, and making that work, because there's certainly a lot of valuable stuff. And that's just our stuff, the stuff that we've seen, the other squishies, things like that, getting that to the right people. And so we still need help with that. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
That was awesome. I can get the recording here and I can run through like a voice recognition.
Okay, so for the first responders here, have you ever worked with that type of data before? Is that something you've ever made use of?
I've worked for
So maybe it's something we can work on as far as, like, how do we ingest that, right? How do we make use of this? You know, we heard it was brought over to the command post and now, right? How do we use it? Can we get a microphone to? Jared?
Snuck up on you, that was good. Just a quick thing, we've done the whole Mosaic thing before for special events, and then we distribute that through TAC as a package. We typically shrink it down a little bit, so it's easier to get it to phones, but I just didn't put two and two together that that was an option here.
Okay. So what's involved in doing that to get it out to people? You
Well,
said you gotta create a
someone,
package.
someone processes it, and then we process it further to make it a little bit smaller, so we're not pushing the absolute highest resolution. But then you send that as a data package and TAC, and it's a map layer, just like in Google Earth or Esri or anything else you can turn on or turn off.
So do you think for next year it would be a good idea to get this like early in the week and then just have like a pre-map and then we push it out on the day of the?
I mean, that would be one way, depending on how gamey we want it to be, or it would really we just all need to work together to be a little bit more disciplined in what we want to achieve in the order. You know, and I'll own some of that, we just showed up like, what do we want to do? You know, we had already kind of done some of the work as far as connecting stuff. But we didn't really have set goals in mind for what all we want to distribute beyond the basics of location and markers.
Okay. I know there was a radiological traffic stop made. Was anybody here involved with that? But you guys did that? And I think I overheard on the radio a request for drone overflight to look in the back of the pickup truck. Were you able to get drone assets in time to do that?
Yeah, it didn't take real long for it to come overhead, but, what was it, about a half hour or so? But, I mean, considering we were doing a radiological investigation on DPS at the time, so we had a little bit of time to work. Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Okay. Other comments about the use of drones? Can you see cases where you'd like to have more drone activity for whatever you're trying to achieve? But how do I get on
So our scenario was a sufficient pack in the parking lot and, we used Brian's bomb certificate behind it. Helps with that, so we kind of gained a little bit. And then, drone overhead would have been useful. I know our command is all about drone footage, they can see what we see out in the field. So that was one thought, that I kind of wish I would have requested in this scenario. I would have done it in the live, but I just didn't think to use it on this particular scenario.
Okay. So do you think we should, in the future, for future versions, we should plan on having more drones available to do that?
We love drones, we love having a visual from overhead and seeing things that we can't see from ground level.
Okay, all right. Any other comments? How about from EMS? Do y'all make use of drones at all? Can we get the microphone? It's good microphone, so the people on the street can hear you.
For a lot of our larger events, especially football games or hopefully the summer with George Strait and the big Mexico-Brazil game in Kyle Field, they're really useful to kind of see crowd movement. And how that kind of looks for us is command will communicate where people are moving, where there's lots of people, so we can move our mobile teams such as bike teams, our ambulances, and our quick response SUV to those locations where we foresee that there's going to be issues.
Okay.
I don't. Do you think that you'll use drones for those events?
We do use them on and off. I believe it's UPD or CSPD has a drone that they put up for those bigger events. I think we used it for 4th of July recently. But for stuff in Aggie Park and stuff like that, it just depends on the other departments. We don't have our own currently.
There are a couple of comments I heard, Christopher from Union Pacific is not here, but I guess in the call station asked, man, do we have anybody from call station fire department? So they indicated while the drones were great to fly, they were able to see everything. There probably still needs to be some more coordination between the pilot and what the hazmat team actually needs them to focus on, because there was a little bit of miscue. They were flying like, well, that, I don't need that, needs to focus over here. And either one of the comments was made, well, maybe an orientation training for the pilots that can focus on what to look for a hazmat incident, or support something as simple as practicing ICS, we have a liaison officer position, can we assign a liaison to work with the drone pilot, a hazmat tech? They can say, yeah, we need you to focus over here. And so maybe there's more familiarization or practice working with them in those different situations.
So in the events that we've been at and the exercises we've had here, it works really well to have the drone team with the hazmat tech. They're the ones who know, and they grunt and say, yeah, oh, over there, up, oh, you got a picture? Got a picture? Okay, got it. Send that back, that sort of thing. So having that close coordination, and we found it's really hard to do distributed. You know, if you're not next to each other, you can't see they're pointing at the screen or kind of doing this. So it's great to have, and that would be one of the things going back to the sheriff's comment, is that we embed, you have some teams, drone squads embedded with the responders that are there back in call for tactical. And then you have these other strategic assets that we were seeing that were being used.
Yeah, and in a situation where that can be, where that can happen, I think that's great. But if you have a really large incident, you may end up, where drone operations are needed all over, and that's what we're trying to create in this scenario. So it creates a little bit of a difficulty, and I think, that there needs to be a way of reminding folks, like, how do we maintain that situational awareness and also, focus on the needs of the client. The client needs to focus over here. The other comment was, I think there was an issue about the ability to see in the field what the drones were actually seeing. In the EOC, with the giant screens, we had no problem. But I think there was a little bit of a difference between what one drone can display and how they went back to a specific display in the field versus what other drones were able to do, and they're having to watch something in a small screen, and everybody has to come around and look at that small screen. So I think those are some of the comments that were brought up to us during the day yesterday.
Yeah, just a few more things on drone coordination. I guess I had the privilege of being able to see the drone operators up close and personal because they were carrying my equipment. Like there was obviously Chris from Union Pacific was really hard to get a hold of, and that's a herding cat problem, which is a really hard problem to deal with. There's about 1 minute total of familiarization between him and the drone pilots. 4 drone pilots had to go set up their drones at the distributed point. So that's a pretty big challenge. But there's also an incident of this in the afternoon where we get a radio call out, hey, we're gonna drop squishies on the rubble pile. The problem is we knew that Brian Fire was also on the rubble pile, so I literally had to go over there because I didn't know who made the request to be able to define where the safe or not safe area is. And in particular, in that particular case, it would have been very helpful to be able to directly contact between the drone team and the controller who made the request to make that deconfliction possible. I literally had to sneaker net over and back to figure that one out. So I think that's another instance of where there's communication, and just sort of to drive a point home. I hope I'm not getting anybody in trouble on this one. I know that the drone team was using a WhatsApp to coordinate their flights, let alone, you know, some of the other radio systems that have been discussed during this scenario. So that's not the same communications channel everybody else is using.
Yeah, and that was, the controllers were using that WhatsApp to coordinate with each other, but really it needs to happen from the team leader in the Bryan Fire Department talking to the UAS branch, and that is practice, right? We gotta build that comfort level of practice. So part of it is the artificiality of the exercise that creates some of these barriers, but I'm glad you were able to overcome by going out there and making physical contact with them. But yeah, that is actually something that is real, and it happens because you don't know where that train or that rubble is gonna happen. And you may have different players that are meeting for the very first time. And while we say we don't want to be exchanging business cards the day of the emergency or the disaster, that is real, it happens. And we gotta figure out how do we practice the standard procedures, so when you're meeting with new players, we are still working to overcome those differences. Anybody else, first responders that might wanna add something to that? Go ahead.
Okay, so in real world scenarios, what we've learned is putting your TAC operator, your TAC manager right next to the air boss, right? And all of that communication is going to come through TAC, right? And then that TAC person is going to sit right there, you know, coordinate the flights on the ground. Now, as far as video, all of that, we do have that embedded into TAC as well, so you can bring up that drone speed straight out of TAC. Again, it was just, you know, a lack of training, but something that we should look into next year, of how to bring up those videos, run TAC and those videos side by side on the screens.
And the last comment is, you're not getting anybody in trouble, because we want these issues to come up in this exercise, right? So that we can learn from them.
Yes, it kind of comes up peripherally, but I have a colleague with a lot of, and I that have a lot of drone resources, and we don't really have a mechanism to offer those for, you know, situations where you might need additional resources. I've even asked a few people, and I just don't seem to have any understanding of how we would go about interfacing with first responders in a situation to provide this resource.
My suggestion is, at least in Texas, statewide, we're trying to organize within councils of government to allow for that, to facilitate that coordination. So if you're in the Houston, talk to the Houston Galveston Council of Government as a way of identifying the key players working in drones. That maybe, that way you can get in the loop and having that conversation. There may be some additional things that need to be done and hurdles that need to be overcome, but at least I'm pointing you in the direction where you can have that conversation.
Well, and this is not necessarily part of the exercise, so just wanted to address your WhatsApp. Every exercise we conduct, we have a way of communicating strictly between controllers. That's not part of the exercise, but part of the organization of conducting the exercise. And so that's why you saw that communication going on. That's not connected directly with any of the operational components. Okay.
Okay, great. Doug, are you running out? Okay, all right, so I'm gonna skip over slightly for a second and talk about Squishy. How many had an opportunity to play with the Squishy robot? Okay, any comments or suggestions about the use of Squishy? For those of you that don't know, Squishy is a floor gas sensor device with cameras, and it can be dropped from a drone or thrown down a tunnel or something like that to see, you know, what's going on if you don't want to send the first responder in there. And it was used at the hazmat location, and it was also used later at the rubble pile.
So I tried to ask our lieutenant over the radiological team what his guys thought, and he said they like the robot, and that's as much, gushing as you're gonna get, I guess.
I know there were people running down the street, they're gonna drop this Squishy, they're gonna drop this Squishy, so they want to see it. Any other comments on Squishy? Doug, you want to say anything about Squishy?
No, just appreciate you down here. I also know that,
Get that microphone, please.
I also know that different vendors have different levels of engagement in scenarios. So I think we're really quite fortunate to be so integral to a few of the scenarios. So we really appreciate that.
Okay, great. So SideLink, so Qualcomm doesn't make devices, right? They make chips that go in your phones. So they had a prototype of SideLink, and again, SideLink is, if you use P25 radios, it's like direct mode under P25 radios, right? So phone to phone, and the ability to create a mesh between phones, and the ability to relay. So if one phone has a connection to the macro network, it can relay to the other phones. So they had a demonstration of their prototype units down sort of near the rubble pile. How many people got to visit that? Okay, any comments anybody wants to make on SideLink, how they think they might use it in the future, what they thought about it?
Yeah, just a comment aside, I mean, for us in Europe, especially in Sweden, it's a game changer. If that doesn't work, we cannot close down our Tetra or P25 system, because we are moving now to 4G, 5G communications, and I will never let go of the system that we have today if we don't have a good solution for device-to-device communication, because I will never, ever risk the work that my colleagues is doing out in the streets of the field, because we have to have the side link. It has to work, so I have a lot of hope in that system, to be honest, but the way we look at it, and it worked fine here, but there are some, I mean, it's line of sight, but we have to get it working in rough areas and stuff like that, so, but it was a good demonstration.
Okay. Well, when are we expecting to see that in production units based on 3GPP version numbers? Microphone.
Yeah, as far as going into production, it's still probably, as far as going into production goes, it's probably still another 3 to 4 years, unfortunately. There are meetings going on right now to attempt to get the funding put together from DoD, hopefully DHS, and then also the EU. We're meeting with the EU in Dubai next week. That's the main reason I'm going there. Next steps on it are to get the chipset brought from technology readiness level of 4.2 up to about 7. And once we have it at 7, then the next step is to get some device manufacturers to actually put it into a real device. The device you saw yesterday is very much an alpha type unit. It's even pre-prototype. As was experienced by, if you went down there, you might have noticed that it was down an awful lot. That the prototype device is not designed to handle Texas heat. So obviously they've got a long, and that's not going to ever be the unit you would see in the field anyway. So that's just a early test model for the chip. But once it goes into production, and my hope is to get a few hundred devices out to some of the public safety people to be able to go ahead and start doing field operations tests to figure out in the procedures how it's going to work and when it's going to work. The timeline we have on that, though, unfortunately, put that out to about 2030, which pretty much coincides with the Swedish turn down of the infrastructure for Tetra. But you know, that's one of the reasons again, the EU is very interested in this, and hopefully we'll be able to go and leverage each other's funding and initiatives. There are committees going on right now. I'm on one of them that is looking at what does the device have to have? What are the device requirements? That's being done by TCTA, which is European. It stands for the Critical Communications Authority. So there's a lot of effort going on in Europe on this, and DHS is very much actively tracking what's happening in the European community. At the end of the day, for things like NATO and stuff like that, we have to be able to communicate with them, with our European partners, device to device. And that's not only defense, but that's public safety as well.
Any other comments on side link? Anyone would like to make comments, questions? Okay, we had another vendor there, Prius. If you were at the hazmat location, hazmat train wreck, they were providing a backup Wi-Fi link. Did anybody have a chance to use that? Prius here? Anybody? Good. Anybody use that backup Wi-Fi link?
Good night. To provide a little background on the Prius project too. So Prius is a company that's received funding from DHS on a separate initiative, and their tasking is to look at, could you build an IP-based backup system for the United States where the entire internet to be knocked out at some point in time that would be independent of the existing infrastructure that are out there. So one of the ideas that they're working on is to look at the feasibility of using electric utilities as utility resources as a method of providing national backup. One way is to use the power lines themselves, but that has got a significant number of issues. But the other way is to go ahead and use the switching and routing nodes that they have to go ahead and actually use fiber that is embedded in all of the utility networks as well. You know, if you ever look at utility networks, there's a lot of fiber that's out there that is very tightly controlled and protected by the utilities to support their operations, their switching stations, their substations and everything else. So the question they're looking at is, could we utilize utility fiber as the national emergency backup system?
Okay, and one that I didn't have on the list, I can't believe I missed it, was Vantic. If there's anybody here in the EOC or, well, I guess it wasn't in the right room in the ICP, we had it in a different room, but anybody here from the EOC during the exercise? Okay, all right, let's talk about the hazmat train wreck location. Was anybody here at the hazmat train location, and what did they think about that location? What did they think about that scenario? Would they like to see something like that again? How useful was it? Any comments you want to make on that? Hazmat train wreck? No? Okay. Stadium collapse. Again, anything you want to comment as far as the location, the scenario involved, how you might see that potentially at a real event, how it was carried out? No? Okay, everything was just fine.
Mike, let me just ask some comments, and I'm gonna start with the stadium collapse. I think the site where the Bryan Fire Department was working from was great. We had an opportunity that the Texas Task Force had been activated and they were available and they were able to kind of team up and play in that area. And so I think from their viewpoint, and I'll ask Ed to see if he had anything, but it sounded like they were working very well and they know what they're doing and they're gonna do it. It's the matter is, how do we develop the technology where it's gonna facilitate the responders' ability to improve what they're doing, right? And so, my only feedback to all the vendors, that you're designing the future equipment that they're gonna be utilizing is to just remind you just to keep that in mind. They're working in an environment where they, if the buttons are not big enough, they may not be able to use them, right? If the device is not ruggedized enough, it may not be able to use them. If it cannot be integrated to what they already, equipment they already have, it's just gonna be additional add-on equipment that they gotta figure out a spot to put it up there around them. And so it's just observations from what I saw, and just more of a reminder as you're designing your future flux capacitor, what it needs to look like so that they can better use it and accept it and have a positive impact in what they do. Ed, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Okay, what about the law enforcement location? So there were a couple of traffic stops and some other things going on. Do you want to explain what it is you guys did and what do you think about that? What was great about it? What needs to be improved?
Overall, the technology worked great for us. There were some times where I used my own phone, staff person on it, to kind of gain the system on the scenario. That goes back to the whole 2 devices and radios is a lot to manage. In the future, maybe bring our own drone team or, some of our own assets that kind of help us with some of the scenarios. And overall, learned a lot and got a lot of good technology I'm gonna take back to the agency and talk about.
What other kind of assets would you want to involve in maybe next year?
Well, mostly, some more personnel, maybe, some more, maybe our team leaders from our SWAT team, our drone team, just to kind of help out, with that and more command staff, more sergeants. Would help, kind of, it doesn't help you be able to observe it and not participate, just so they can see how it does start and finishes.
Okay, great, thank you. How about over here?
It kind of mirror what he said, the technological issue that I had, mainly with the tax system, was we use so many different devices, like one of us would have an iPhone, another would have Kyocera and Samsung. The map on the one that I got was very blurry, so it was difficult to drop pins. But then I just kind of improvised and, you know, the situation was fluid. I look at Lindley over there and say, hey, can you drop a pin? I can't see, you know, it's not on the map, and then you do it for me. So that was the main issue that I had. I do think it would be better if we expanded and we had more people to get that experience. You know, that situation just to be closer to a big building like that. Yeah. Collapses, you know, so. Yeah.
And I think that, we were limited because of the fact that there was also graduation taking place, so it all goes back to that comment about when we find the right time to schedule the future events, don't conflict with other events that are gonna tie up some of your resources.
And then, Michael, I think one of the things that you're getting at, what I got from Brian Fire and from College Station was the facility. Brian, was very appreciative. They got a lot of work done from what I understand. Some new folks on the team, they were able to get some training that they hadn't had before. Texas Task Force One, thanks to our caller, got an impromptu ability to get some things signed off in their book on their water operation. And thanks to the exercise here and the facilities that we have. And then the hazmat team, College Station, while they could only stay half a day because of one, it was hot, and also they sent a group over. You know, these guys came on overtimes, they're paying their folks, some have limited training budgets, and so they were appreciative of that. And so I think the great facility that lended well to being able to utilize the equipment in a very real situation, and just build on it in the future. Sorry.
With regard to the other resources available to us, being the explosive canine handler, I work very closely with the College Station Bomb Squad. And we did have an audible in the afternoon scenario by putting explosive material out for my dog to locate, but the scenario is based around a radiological device, and Bomb Squad carries those with them, and they carry one that are far better than what we currently have. So that would have been a resource that in that situation, I would have heavily relied on. One worked together well, so they carry the device. It's far superior. I mean, we were having to walk up to individual cars, stand there. Okay, now you're ready to move over. Oh wait, sorry, now, and they just walk by and like, oh, we can just follow this thing and do the crowd, so. But that's a resource that we would like.
Yeah, we'll make a note and reach out to them, future, exercises to try to secure their participation. So, thank you for bringing that up.
What about EMS? What was y'all's role and what do you think of the exercise?
I think it's a great exercise, especially with integrating everybody. Our role was supervising the structural collapse, I'd say. So we were just kind of there as a resource should they need it. Our role in real life, where a lot of this would come to play would be with ingress and egress. You know, we have a very minimal role immediately on scene. So having the resources, especially the overview to locate the patient where they're at, including just the side of the building, could save 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes for us, which is significant. So being able to integrate the response and, you know, getting back out to a designated location or staging area.
Would something like TAC be useful for you to do that?
Absolutely. We can even use it. We were using it yesterday to locate the teams that were calling in. So having that view exactly where they're at on the map would take away most of our issues. Especially if it integrated well with some sort of mapping or CAD software. We could use that very easily.
Okay, very good. Any others that were, what about DBS? What about you? Do you know what the troopers had to say? They're not very cool.
You know, the comment that I got were similar to with law enforcement that I've already brought up. They're appreciated. I wanna, Juan, my brother's and Kelly's brother and father, he's with the FTC and FCC, we asked them in the exercise to do a spectrum scan and you found something. Did you all, can you say a couple of words of what you all found?
Yes, thank you.
Basically, in a normal scenario, the FCC provides daily reports. It's called DIRS, is a disaster information reporting system. And the carriers, that would be broadband, wireless, wireline facility, they provide to us a daily report. Is a voluntary basis. And that is provided to the state and to the Fed in order to know what is situational awareness in that area during the disaster. In this particular exercise, we provide an scenario to show what type of information we provide, but we also did a spectrum scan for all the different bands, especially the public safety band and broadcast. And we were able to identify different signals that it was correlated to our database, but as well as around 7 frequencies that we were, 3 of them were suspicious, and 3 others that we had to double check. We try to locate those signals, and there was one that coming from my public safety. But basically, you know, as part of the exercise is just to show what capability the FCC have in situations.
And what they found was not stuff that was scripted in the exercise. This is what was out there live. And so you wrote.
Correct. And the good thing about that report is it just provide call signs, it provide frequencies, the to who belongs that licensee, GPS location. So in a situation where there's someone supposed to be transmitting or need some type of some communication, and we are not seeing that, then we can communicate or do some outreach to see what is the problem, whether it has the tower got destroyed, or there's a problem with the fuel, with the generators, and we can start providing or help in the situation to get back in service.
Thank you, Juan. Okay, so overall, any other comments anybody wants to make? Who's gonna be back again next year? Oh, great, fantastic. Format, any suggestions to the change in format? Or the content that we do? We did hear we want to have a little better objectives, more clear objectives, right? Or the facilities. Anything, is there any particular thing you'd like to try to exercise next year? Any particular scenario, any particular type of facility you want to look at? Yes, sir.
As far as the scenarios and facilities go, we have a whole field force. Riots are a big thing right now throughout the state that they're focused on. So that's one of the things that we'd like to get them involved with, maybe some type of mock riot type of situation. Overall, the technology was real good. Mr. Randall will tell you, I'm known to break things. So the fact that you don't have broken technology or equipment is a point in health books.
Okay, yes, it will. You're back, Derek?
The Go tenant devices.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the PD and
Yeah, I have some, I don't know if anybody from law enforcement, what, have any feedback on Go Down?
So we used the goats in a little bit and it worked well for us. I didn't use it in particular. I was using just cell service or 5G or whatever. But other officers that were with us, they turned their devices completely into airplane mode and were still able to communicate with us and get out essentially. So we liked it.
Okay. Sure.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Cortana. Really, with Cortana, it's just the backup. So I think there was a moment where the team had lost all other connectivity, but we're still able to
Yeah.
Yeah, there was,
We can't hear you, Derek, on the.
so there was no cellular, it dropped out, and the only team that was able to send messages, drop a pin, and have any kind of location or situational awareness was the team that was on GoTenna.
All right.
So it's not it's a ad hoc mesh network that is a backup. That's all it's meant for, situations like that. So it appeared that it worked.
Okay, any other suggestions for next year? Yes, sir.
So one of the things that we are looking at, and we probably need to get one other group involved, but maybe use of AI ML. That might be something to take a look at. How do we use AI ML, at least for public safety, and start looking at some of the automatic alerting features? That might be something that we and I look at. And tie that into potentially, I don't know how it works with your stuff, with TAC, but certainly AI ML can detect and only alert when thresholds are met. So that would kind of tie into IoT devices, whether it's physio, heart rate, overtime, or at least for fire. That might be interesting.
The Air Force Research Labs that's responsible for the creation of TAG is heavily interested right now in the artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff, and they're funding things, so that would be a thing we want.
I think that'd be great.
You said IML, just for our notes, what was it?
AI.
Yeah.
Machine learning.
I'm thinking back to the days in UFC where we used to monitor all the Twitter and all that kind of feeds. And linking into your riot idea, maybe you got some early indicators or something about that, right? And if you got AI monitoring that stuff, yeah. Okay.
The Twitter one.
I'm sorry?
The Twitter one.
Yeah. Any other comments on format, contents, facilities, or generally any other comments that anybody wants to make on the exercise? Yes, sir.
Any chance of possibly using Relish?
Yes, yeah, we originally wanted to use Relish for drone flights and they had at Relish a beyond visual line of sight corridor. And it just turns out none of the drone folks wanted to use it for this particular exercise. TDM was out there with their DDEOC, disaster district EOC, but their specific objective was to just check out all the equipment because it had just been stood up about a few weeks before.
And then also they got committed to real life incidents, the flooding on the Brussels and they're responding to some of those incidents. I think there's an opportunity where we can maybe in future years, if we do this again, try to expand this in area to have a bigger presence with coordination with others. I think that's what we need to go.
Reschedule the flooding, like maybe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of assets out there we could make use of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, not to put your ball on the spot here, possibly some full scale cameras. I don't know,
There, that's clear, okay. Yeah.
the ability to use some of the Cox cameras.
Yeah, let's just call it RF interference. I think that would be really interesting. Like I said, if you guys could do that, then this might be an interesting place to kind of add to our cadre of testing facility.
And have conversation with Juan as well on who to do that.
Yeah, but it's a mixture, right? Because once you get into that, then you get UAS and then you get counter UAS and then you get GPS denied. So it's all integrated, but certainly I think you'd have a lot of challenges with the airport nearby, but it might be something to discuss.
Yeah, so for law enforcement, are you involved in any counter UAS activities? No? Okay. We've seen some really neat demonstrations. I guess the rules are that there's only 4 federal agencies that are allowed to actually take mitigating action. But of course, anybody can monitor. And so we've seen some demonstrations out there where they'll detect and then go out and capture the drone and bring it down electronically. Okay,
About the cards.
so we had the, FTI guys out here with the PIP cards. And I think the numbers were 5% or 10% of the people had their PIP cards with them. And, most of the other people were checked in via their driver's licenses. But we did the check-in and out of equipment with that, and the check-in and out of certain locations with that. Any comments or suggestions on how that went? Yes, sir.
European driving license, the European driving license didn't work. That's saying that her name is correct.
Nobody could remember their 8-digit password.
Well, my comment was from check-in, check-out of equipment, I think it was very easily. Don't have to worry about trying to, where's that log? I see sometimes those logs get lost. And so it was great. Yeah, we barcoded each of the photos. It's very easy to check them in and out. Did you have a comment?
A different comment, I think the emails that was sent out every day was super. It came in the right time, it has the exact amount of information I needed. Be here tomorrow at that time, at this place.
Okay.
They were kind of lengthy, but the sweet spot was on the same spot every day. So it took me a second. Very good.
Very good. Okay.
I didn't write them.
For those who read them, it wasn't actually for me, it was for that.
Okay, want to talk about next steps, and AJ, you want to tell us like what's going to happen next as far as communication, video, all kinds of stuff. Here.
Okay, so I'm sitting here setting up our after action report. So we have, a lot of the information is in Huba. So if you want to, download, or export all of the information for the contacts of everyone who is registered, you can find that in Huba. So you can download the whole spreadsheet. So, also, if you have any documents, if you are a speaker panelist, if you want to share information, especially vendors, you can find documents about, each vendor has the capability of uploading information. But you can contact anybody who is involved in the event. Everybody should have registered. We tried to catch everybody showing up yesterday. And I believe, Valerie, if you have it up.
We got the registration 2 minutes ago.
Oh, somebody registered 2 minutes ago. So we, I believe it was 267 attendees. So that was a huge increase. So we're gathering all of that data, and we'll publish after action report, with everything about the event and then these takeaways. So we're recording it, taking messages. We really want to do a good job with the follow-up, after this event. So our team internally will meet next week, to put everything together. As far as photos, I know I have a lot of, questions about photos. So the photo team went back to DC this morning. They will be processing, they had got a ton of material. So we are working out how, we're going to share it with everyone. But we'll have that figured out by next week, probably by the time that they have them. But all of the photos that, our team, well, our, videography and photography team took will be available to everyone. So, we're going to try to organize it, either by day or whatever, but, we'll figure that out and publish it. We'll also send out a survey. I'm also working on that right now. We would appreciate everyone. I'm gonna try to make it as short as possible, for everyone to fill that out. So we do have that feedback to make decisions about the planning for next year. So I've contemplated making the photos, unavailable until you fill out the survey. So, let's see, what else? Yeah, so the recordings of the presentations, we're doing our best to get those, downloaded and, in the Huba app. If we can't do it, some of them are too long, or the files are too big. So
we're working on other options for the access to the website, to have the recordings for those who are registered for the event. As far as next year, it will, so one thing I struggled with graduation week is I usually use students big time. So as volunteers, as help, basically. So that was something that we had none, except for my Brazia. So she's graduating. Anyway, so next year we'll definitely have more help logistically with students engaged by not having it on this weekend. Anybody have any questions as far as next steps for me? Yes.
We are sending you the handheld rugged device, so you can download it from your. Can we send it directly to you?
As I spoke earlier about the handheld rugged device white paper, we are sending it to AJ's, so you can find it there.
Are you not gonna send us the device?
Oh, I was like, yes. Yeah, so we can, we can upload that as well. As far as utilizing the app, we will use it next year, but I think we learned a lot about how it works, and it'll be, I think, more streamlined for next year.
Very great, thank you. So I want to make sure you guys know who was responsible for all of this. So first of all, AJ organized the entire event from start to finish, Monday through Friday. So a big round of applause for him. Valerie was invaluable. Basically, every time I needed something, call Valerie and she'd take care of it. So she does Valerie.
Yeah, so Valerie's on my team, and she has done a lot of the work with registration, figuring out logistics and helping with everything. So thank you.
And then Kelly was our audio video guru, doing all the streaming work for the whole week.
I know Kelly is a really good friend of mine, and he's completely volunteered to do this the whole week. He's a former IT in the military and good friend. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Derek, come on up here. Yes, come up here. So Derek's one of our engineers, and we put him in the lead position for the exercise. So all of the technology that was deployed, how it worked, all of that stuff, which sounds like it's about 95% all good. Derek did a fantastic job organizing the rest of the team. Derek?
Thank you.
Patrick, where are you? Where's Patrick? Oh, there he is. All right, come on up here. So Patrick was secondary lead, and also primary for all the tax stuff that went on. So we'll go to big thank you to Patrick. Who did stand up. Logan did all the 911 stuff, and he's been working for weeks and weeks and weeks with all the carriers doing 911 for another project we're working on. But he did all the setup for 911 and all the training of the people and helped them operate it yesterday. Logan? And Richard, where's Richard? Come on up here. So Richard, we actually had on a couple of other projects. We're trying to balance. We've got 15 different active research projects going on. We have to do some other work at the same time. So Richard's been working on that stuff, but he was also helping with Chris and getting the network set up for those guys to go over the power lines and all that kind of stuff, and also generally helping the rest of the team. So Richard.
Totally. I want to give a shout out to the TEEX team as well. We work with TEEX all the time on projects, and so I'm so grateful to have that relationship. So Ray and Juan, Esther, everybody, Clint,
Clint, I'm such a pain in his butt often. Like, yeah. But they're always here, being very flexible and, helping me out a lot. And I know it was a new experience, for Juan, but you rolled with it and did a great job. So thank you for the support. And I think y'all did a great job. It's a great facility. We're really lucky to have it. So thank you.
Yeah, and as we mentioned yesterday with Ray, if you need somebody to help you organize your events, write the easel, do all of the incident action plan, all that stuff, they can do that for you. They've done it for, what was it in New York City?
Yeah, we're partners with the Port Authority in New York, New Jersey. We do their exercises in LaGuardia, JFK, the subway systems, ports, New Jersey Transit, and then several other customers across the country.
So we're kind of small potatoes for these guys. They're used to dealing with really, really big events. So even, large or small, they can help you out if you have something you want to try to do. And they're great partners to work with. All right, and lastly, I just want to thank all of you for coming. We had a great time working with you. We learned a lot. We're certainly learning a lot today. And we hope you had a good time. We hope it was worth your time to be here. We'll hope you come back. We'll have new stuff to show next year. We'll have new things to learn from you next year. And I can't say how grateful I am for how well this thing went this year. It's been fantastic. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. You will not be in a tent, promise.